Jupiter at Night is presented live before an internet audience. It's an audience on the internet, and it's Jupiter at Night.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Jupiter at Night. My name is Chris.
My name is Jeremy.
So tonight's episode, we're going super retro.
Yes, we are.
I guess it's kind of ridiculous
It could
to
be
call.
more retro.
Yeah, 1995 isn't super retro, but in terms of the internet, it's pretty retro.
The internet was only out since 93, technically.
Yeah. And this idea kind of came up. We were brainstorming, farting around with the chat room in our pre-show last night on Jupiter at Night over at jupiterbroadcasting.com.
We were having so much fun talking, reminiscing about old-timey computer geeky stuff that we almost scrapped our whole show last night and did this last night. But we decided to give it one more day.
And so we did our research too. Yeah, it was fun. So we're going to pick out some of the fun things that came out 15 years ago. Now, the context of this discussion, think of it like this. The internet was really still pretty new. People were not sure if it was even going to take off. It was in question. Is it pie in the sky? There was an article from Newsweek that made the internet sound like it was never going to take off. The internet, ho-hum, the internet's never going to go anywhere.
This is a Newsweek.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are supposed to be reputable.
Interesting enough, though, one of the things they talk about in this article is the internet is not social enough. And I would say in the last few years, that's been a major, big change.
Yes.
But why don't we talk about a little bit of the major landmarks in the last 15 years?
Sure.
Do you have any favorites that popped to mind?
Well, you mentioned that the internet was so new. I just want to throw a big, quick stat out there for you guys.
Okay.
In 1995, in August of 1995, there were only 18,957 websites. 18,000.
Whoa.
By 2006, there were 92 million.
I think I visit 18,000 websites in a day.
So do I.
92
At
million?
least get that many pop-ups.
So there was 92 million by the end of 06. So, boy, now I can't even imagine how many there must be.
Yeah, it's probably grown to trillions.
A Googleplex, probably.
Ooh.
Probably. So that's a pretty... So the time period we're talking about, there's only 18,000 people doing this. And remember, businesses didn't even know if they should be associated with the internet. That was a big thing. It's also the year that The Net came out, Sandra Bullock's hacker movie.
Which is basically a paranoid dream of the internet.
It was also...
But, by the end of 1995, the dot-com boom had basically begun.
It kicked off.
Yeah.
95 was also the year that the clones were born, the Apple clones. The Apple computer was...
Their short-lived life, but...
was not under the helm of Steve Jobs.
Yeah, the very first Mac OS license went up to a company called Radius back in 1995, and they started building clone Macs.
Yeah.
Which were, by all accounts, thousands of times better than Macs at the time.
Yeah, Apple was in a rough spot hardware-wise, and some of these machines, I think it was one of the Power Computing or something like that. They had a exclusive deal for a little while with one of the chip manufacturers, so they had faster chips, CPUs than Apple had. It was a really big...
Well, this Radius company used Motorola chips, which were way faster than the chips that Mac was using.
And eventually, Apple switched to the Motorola chips. And what they did is when Steve Jobs came back, one of his first things was to kill the project. The way he did it was kind of interesting, though. He didn't just come right out and void all the contracts because they would have gotten sued and Apple did not have the money. Instead, he jacked up the royalty rates to make it uncomfortable for them to pay, and then was also able to use a little clause in the agreement that said, well, actually, this agreement only applies to Mac OS System 7, and we're rolling out System 8, which was actually going to be called System 7.7. But they rolled it to System 8, that way they could get out of this contract. And then the other guys, their only option was to continue to buy the older OS, which nobody wanted that.
Now, this was really when Apple started turning evil, wasn't it?
Well, it was when Jobs came back. Well, some people would say it saved the company, though, because the clone makers weren't able to offer sort of that boutique experience that Apple tries to go for.
For better or worse, I guess, if you think about it.
Yeah. But it was an interesting time when you could go down and you could have other people besides Apple making Macs. And with Mac OS X on there, even with Apple ROMs, legit. I mean, today we've got Hackintoshes, but...
Those
aren't
necessarily 100% legit.
Now, it's pretty obvious, 95, we got Windows 95.
Windows 95. The biggest Windows software launch, I think you said ever. The most hyped anyway.
Yeah, at least the most hyped. I mean, I remember there was people with tents waiting in line.
He says that their sales were so crazy good, they sold out in several locations, and after 4 days, more than 1 million copies were sold, which was Pretty unheard
is
of at the
pretty
time
unheard of.
for an operating system.
Now, Windows 95 had the stringent requirement of 4 megabytes of RAM.
Holy cow, 4?
Tech pundits were angry about this. This was a shining example of Microsoft's bloat. The fact that what could you possibly need 4 megabytes of RAM just to run the operating system for? It was outrageous. Yeah.
And we'll get a little bit more into that later on, talking about RAM requirements, because PC, what was it? PC Builder or something like that? They released a look back at their dream machines
Maximum
over the past
PC.
15.
Yeah,
Maximum
we'll get to
PC,
that.
that's it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That came out. Maximum PC just today happened to release an article that shows
The last 15 years.
of their ultimate gaming machine, like how many cores. We'll get to that in a minute. But also, while we're on the operating system topic, 1995 was the year Red Hat was formed. By this point, we'd already had several Linux distributions out on the market, including Debian and SUSE, which are still around today.
Mm-hmm.
But this when the actual company was formed. There was Red Hat Linux that actually I think came out in '94, and then Red Hat Software was 2 different guys got together and created that in '95.
And now they have a podcast all about them.
We'd have the Linux Action Show all about Linux. Also, in '95, USB was announced, but nobody saw a purpose for it yet.
No.
And the specs weren't totally agreed upon and all that.
That sort of external data transfer rates were like unheard of. Why would you ever need that?
Right. And
Why
people
would you
didn't-
ever need 4 megs of RAM?
And it wasn't until I think Apple's iMac in 1998 came out that it really took off, where people saw USB printers, USB keyboards, all these
keyboards
different
and mice.
Yeah, and then people were like, oh, universal. We should use that. Could be helpful. So that was interesting. Oh, also, the birth of JavaScript.
The birth. And 15 years later, they still can't get it right.
Yeah, I know, right? That's just wild that JavaScript's that old. It was called like the Java Web Platform or something.
Yeah. And actually, for its time, completely revolutionary. It just, I would hope that after 15 years, something in the software world might have evolved a little more. Because it's still kind of chunky.
It is a little slow. I mean, we're just now coming up with browsers that are really, really trying to attack performance there.
Yeah.
We also had the announcement of the DVD.
Now, this surprised me. I thought DVDs came out later than this, because I can recall getting my first CD-ROM in like 93.
Yeah, the DVDs didn't ship in 95. The spec was finalized. That's pretty wild. It took a long time for DVD to actually make it to the market.
Yeah.
Now, were you telling me that eBay launched this year?
Yeah, in 1995, and it was called Auction Web.
That's
back there at
right.
the time. This is I found hilarious. Their first item ever was sold in 1995. It was a broken laser pointer
Oh, really?
for $13.83. I think it was probably just people trying out the technology, getting the actual web.
They wanted their auction web
to work.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, a broken laser pointer.
You know, Alta Vista launched in 95 as well.
Yeah, search engine.
Yeah.
And
first search.
spawned that whole string. You remember some of the other ones like Hotbot? Ask Jeeves, I guess, is still around, but it's like there were so many out at that time. Web crawler, I guess that was probably the AOL version, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the web. Speaking of AOL, that's,
Yeah.
AOL was big back in 1995. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of us here were AOL users. We came across a hilarious AOL commercial that we'll put the link to in the show notes. But you know what? I got to be honest. So first of all, in this commercial for AOL, this guy has to kind of break down the very concepts of what connecting your computer to a network means and what sending an electronic
And this
email
is an
means.
email.
Right.
It's just like a letter, but it's on your computer.
And then he shows like how you can go get news and stocks and all this kind of stuff. But honestly, watching this is incredibly of a big throwback for me, because my family
AOL
was
whore.
My family
all
was
over that.
AOL.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had Prodigy too, and look at that right there. You remember that?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, it's crazy to see this, and it's also just a really hilarious
And the chat
commercial.
rooms, and
I was big.
Oh,
in the chat room.
Excite. That was another the search engines I was thinking of.
AOL was sending out those free CDs, and it was just, I don't know, it was so big, and now to see them now, it's all so changed.
And everybody just AOL's a joke these days. In August of 95, Microsoft unveiled their own Internet Explorer
1.0.
It was to launch with Windows 95 integrated into the operating system. I just find it funny that later that next month, Netscape Navigator came out with their 2.0.
Yeah, you bet, right?
It was like, yeah.
One more.
Rub it
One
in.
more is better. Yeah. Yeah, I was also the first year of E3, not really computer related, but kind of interesting now to look and see how huge of a production that is.
After just 15 years, it's huge.
You've
seen tech expos grow much slower than that, but
We'll have a link in the show notes. There is a really great timeline, a couple of different great timelines for different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the one that I thought was pretty good. Did you like this one from the BBC here?
I did. It's not very well formatted, but it's got some good information in it.
It does.
Like right here, the birth of the World Wide Web.
So that's a fun one if you kind of want to check that out over the weekend. Because, sometimes that's a fun little Saturday thing to scratch your
The first
curiosity
webcam
itch.
goes on live in 1993, and it was so that people on the lower floor could watch the coffee pot upstairs and not have to walk upstairs if there was no coffee.
I love that caffeine is the driver of technology there.
Yep.
That's hilarious.
It is. That's great.
Good
timeline, too.
There was a few really, really big games that came up. But before we talk about that, why don't we throw it to that Maximum PC article?
Yes.
This Maximum PC article they put out, it breaks down over the last 15 years their specific gaming machine.
Like once a year, they come out and do their dream machine build, which is like a top of the line. They try to save costs when they can, but they try to build a top of the line computer that'll, it's got the best compatibility and the best specs and the best parts.
And I used to be subscribed to Maximum PC when they did this. So
do
I
I.
remember
So do I,
them going through this, and
I still think like 2 years ago, I bought their Dream Machine article.
So this isn't representative of the entire industry, but it's representative of what people were trying to buy back then.
Mm-hmm.
So bring up that.
This is their processor clock speed.
I find this interesting. So this chart here that we're looking at.
I can't really scroll.
That's all right. It's not too bad.
Okay.
In 1995-96, we're at 200 megahertz.
Yeah.
As you watch this, by 2004, we ramp all the way up to 3.6 gigahertz. Then we actually drop back down.
That's because that's when we started using dual cores and quad cores.
Yep. And then we kind of a little flatlined a little bit, but it's interesting.
Well, the last 2 years, 2010 and 2009, are the exact same clock speed. 33.
Not much growth there.
Nope.
Kind of to be expected as we have been adding cores.
Their original
speed.
Dream Machine back in 1996 is actually, it's not 1995 on here, but was a 486 200.
Wow.
I would have killed for a 200 back then. I think my machine back in 95 was a 486 66.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I think I remember having only 2 megs of RAM when Windows 95 hit. I think that was a big deal for me.
Also of interest, back then Maximum PC was called Boot.
It was?
Yeah, it was called Boot. And that was their first building the machine was their Dream Machine on the Pure PC Power Boot magazine.
Wow.
This is a great one. This is a great one. So this right here is the RAM chart. It starts in 1996 at their high-end machine now. This is the high-end machine.
This is their Dream Machine.
8 megabytes of RAM.
Yeah, then we go 64, 128. It pretty much doubles then. Dips down in 2001. I don't know why.
Yeah, they must have tried to build a cheaper machine or something. They went to 256 megabytes.
And then back up to 512, and then BAM! 8 gigs.
Huge leap. They leaped.
From 1 gig to 8.
Yep.
Then back down to 2.
And so
and back up to 8.
2004 to 2005 was a huge leap.
Yeah.
And then in 2009 to 2010...
6 gigs in 2009 to 24.
Ridiculous. But,
it's
it is a dream machine. Yeah,
RAM
I know.
is so cheap these days.
But that kind of puts in perspective how high those other numbers must have been.
Mm-hmm.
Like 8 must have been really quite large. And we're talking...
In the last 15 years, they've gone from 8 megabytes of RAM in your machine for a Dream Machine to 24 gigabytes of RAM in your machine.
A little mind-blowing,
We have processors these days with 8 megabyte cache.
Mm-hmm. We do.
I mean, what in 15 years, are we going to have processors with 24 gig cache?
Maybe.
That seems ridiculous to me.
I don't think we will.
Actually, that makes me think, why don't they just combine the architectures? Why are we still living in such a modular world like that?
Let me get to that because we were kind of thinking about maybe talking about our predictions, and I have a prediction to that. I wanted to show this cover because this is I jumped ahead here, but this cover stood out at me because I was building a machine the exact week that this magazine came out.
You remember this? This is 1999?
Yeah, and this image is seared into my head because I was building my machine, and so I went through this magazine page by page saw if they went, and it was so crazy going through this article and seeing that, and just boom, it all just came back to me. It was great. Any other charts on that list that jumped out at you quite a bit?
Well, there's this other tech timeline from the Pointers. I'd never heard of these guys before.
Yeah.
You put it in here.
I liked it, though.
I don't claim this one. It's all him.
I see how it is.
But that's the one where we found the Newsweek article that was kind of humorous to look up. That's actually a cool timeline because it goes back and finds things that are still on the web that were from that time.
Yeah.
To kind of give you an idea of what the whole world looked like back then.
Yep. You know, we should mention, too, in 1995, Amazon.com launched as a bookstore only. That's adorable.
And now it runs the world.
Now, so some of the games that came out in 1995 that were really
I went through
huge.
I went through the top PC selling games for 1995. Just pick 4 because there were a lot of them out there. Most of them I didn't play, so I didn't have a lot to talk about. But the top ones, I'll just give you all of them, and then we can talk about each of them. Command & Conquer, Warcraft 2, Tides of Darkness, Descent, and Myst.
Yes.
You guys remember those games? These were ground-shattering at the time.
I probably wore the coding off the CD-ROM for Descent. I played that so hard.
Well, let's talk about that one first because this was one of the first truly three-dimensional games that you could get. They had like flight simulators and stuff like that, but even Wing Commander really had it had like if you were flying down and you let go, it would gradually bring you back to the horizon, so you wouldn't get lost.
Yep.
But Descent actually advertised as 6 degrees of freedom, and they built these entirely three-dimensional maps that were meant to have no up.
Oh, well, on top of that, it wasn't at launch, but afterwards, 3D was kind of big back then. And my dad had a special video card with 3D glasses, so when I could play on his computer, I got to actually play it in 3D. Do you have a video of it? Because I
do here.
I loved this game so hard. You might have to jump a little ahead because it was very...
wordy.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. There's some gameplay.
Just ton of fun. And when you wear this thing with 3D glasses, I cannot tell you how much I played this game.
And Descent
probably
was
illegal.
kind of, a lot of people use Crysis these days as a benchmarking tool. Descent was kind of the benchmarker of the time.
Then they followed it up with Free Space, which was a fantastic space game.
Yeah.
An amazing space shooter. So I love Descent a lot. I'd love to see that one remade. That would be a good... All these games that we see being remade these days.
It'd be really hard to make something like this. Oh, remember those? You had to grab the refills for your your weapons.
The
otherwise you
missiles
could run
and
out
energy.
Of weapon fuel, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. weapon gas. I don't know. Now, Myst?
Yeah, let's see.
Did you play yourself some Myst?
I did just enough to know that I did not like Myst.
So,
not a Myst fan.
Funny story about Myst for me. I actually did not really like Myst that much either. I played it a ton because...
I couldn't get past one of the puzzles, and it wasn't the first one. It was like the third or fourth one. But I couldn't get off the first island, and then I went back to school after a long weekend of playing Myst and really enjoying it, and my friends were like, dude, on the third island you can get to... And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I know.
So I threw it away.
For me, Myst was the only game that our computer lab at school had in the computer lab.
Yeah.
If you wanted to play a game, it had to be Myst.
Yeah. It was like Oregon Trail, Number Munchers,
for a while
and
it was
Myst.
Oregon Trail, but this kind of supplanted Oregon Trail in my school, and so I had no choice, so I played a lot of Myst. And I tried to pick it up again.
Okay, Rob Loach in
the
the chat room is pointing out that Chrono Trigger came out in 1995, I believe. I was only looking at PC games, but yeah, if that came out in 95, huge big ups for Chrono Trigger.
Oh.
Probably one of the best RPGs ever.
Really?
Honestly.
Whoa. You're saying that on... That was the other thing. The other reason we kind of decided to take this retro look was StarCraft just came out, 12-year-old game, kind of in the range. We thought, let's look back.
StarCraft came out in 1998. So on that topic, let's look at some of these other real-time strategies that came out this year, because this is really the year that kicked off the butting of heads between the guys that made Command & Conquer and Blizzard that was making Warcraft.
Right. I mean, that's right.
Yeah.
That was hot.
Yeah, these guys, I mean, Warcraft basically ran the real-time strategy market for a long time. And then, you guys remember this?
Yes. Yes, Warcraft.
As
this
recently
was Warcraft 2 in 95.
As recently as probably 4 years ago, I played through Warcraft 2. This is it was a fantastic game. But that same year when this came out was Command & Conquer.
Yes. Now, I was more of a Command & Conquer fan.
I didn't own Command & Conquer, but a friend of mine did. And every time I went over to his house, we would play Command & Conquer. Command & Conquer came with 2 copies of the CD in the box.
That's right.
And he happened to have, I played on his dad's computer, and he played on his, but he had them installed on both, because as soon as he bought the game, it was instant multiplayer. That was awesome.
It's a very cool feature.
I mean, what? Nobody does that anymore these days.
Now, if I recall this...
You can't even buy like a collector's edition with 2 copies of the game in there.
Nope.
That doesn't exist.
If I recall, this was one of the first games to have some sort of really weak CD copy protection, too, or like a CD check.
Yeah, it would check to see that this... But you could disable that by just typing -CD...
On the command line?
In the command line. It was like, well,
that's
tried.
the kind of DRM I like.
But remember, copy protection up until this point was like stupid code breakers and manuals and stuff like that just were built to just kick you off.
I remember a lot of the games had codes and stuff like that where you had to have the manual.
Well, like before we started recording today, you brought up the Star Trek 25th anniversary.
That was one of them.
That had a star chart that came with it, and in order to go to the next mission, you had to be able to plot your course on the star chart.
Yep.
That was ridiculous.
Now, do you want to talk about any other particular games, or should we talk about our predictions?
Because you know that I'm a big MMO fan.
Yeah, okay.
1995 marked the beginning of the MMORPG era with a game that most people consider to be the very first MMORPG ever, Meridian 59, which I believe
never even heard of it.
Was primarily text-based. This predates even Ultima Online or EverQuest.
Oh, you're counting like MUD BBS type games.
It's more than a MUD. I never played Meridian 59, but everybody that you talk to says that basically that created the MMO genre. And I've got a link in the show notes. It's still playable. You can go online and play Meridian 59 if you want to right now. And I might actually try it out.
You should. That'd be fun.
I might try it out tonight after the show if you stick around the lives chat.
It looks old.
It is old. And
download the installer. Shoot, let's do it.
Get started.
We'll do it in the post show. Why not?
Yeah.
All right. Now, I want to talk a little predictions. So let me know when you're ready to do that. You want to cover a couple more games?
Nope. But I do want to let you guys know that I've got some more links in the show notes for retro gaming sites. Good Old Games, which we've mentioned a few times. Console Classics is actually ran by a fan of Jupiter Broadcasting, so give them a big thumbs up.
Yep.
GameTap is a service that I used to subscribe to. It is a pay service, but they have a lot of good classic games on there that you can't get without emulating them anymore.
I've never checked out GameTap.
GameTap has the emulators built in, so you just launch it from there.
Console Classics has a bunch of great retro Star Trek games.
Yeah.
So if you're a retro Star Trek gamer, Console Classics, Good Old Games has a lot of like the really popular old games that the nice thing about Good Old Games, and I think Console Classics does this too, and maybe probably GameTap, is they ensure that those old games, they package them so that they'll run on modern systems.
Yeah, they're emulators.
Like $5.
Emulators are built into these. So you don't have to go and download.
Oh, sure, you can go buy an iPhone app or Android thing that'll tell you the color blue.
Yeah,
is blue,
and there are just tons of emulators and ROMs that you can get on the internet. But I would not recommend going to look for those. Stick to the good, well-known services like this, because a lot of the sites are actually malicious.
All right, I've got a prediction.
You've
got a prediction in 15 years.
Where will the computers be in the future?
In 15 years, where are we going to be at?
Go first.
Oh, okay. All right. So my prediction is thusly. I think in 15 years, and I think we'll be there a lot sooner than 15 years, but I think in 15
same
years,
with mine, I think.
it's going to be really well-oiled, is computers are going to be essentially internet pads. And now they're going to be full desktops. You're still going to have full desktops, but the computing processing power probably is going to get a lot faster than what we have today, but comparatively, the growth trend is going to have leveled off. And the reason for that is because bandwidth to the home will have increased so much in most areas that a lot of times when you render a job like today, we're just starting to get, when you need to convert a video, a lot of software now will just starting to use the GPU. It'll offload that task to the GPU. That will happen only to the cloud.
Oh.
It will be an integrated service, so like an Apple computer or a Microsoft computer will come with this service. It'll be just part of like a third processing core, and you'll send the job to Microsoft.
That'll just be like collective power.
And they're going to want to do it because they're going to want to index everything you do, and they're going to send it back to you. So they're going to be able to monetize that, and it's going to be the computers we have today will be a lot less responsible for the actual workload, is my prediction.
So not fully cloud computing, but closer to it.
Right. And then
kind of like an integrated
tablets,
half and half.
It could be almost full cloud. And then you come to your computer, the application dynamically scales how much runs locally based on the machine that you're at.
Did you see, I don't think we've talked about it on this show, but they basically figured out ways to now receive data. We can already send data at the speed of light, but the problem is receiving it in a way that can be processed.
Because computers are essentially having a hard time processing things at the speed of light.
Many scientists have figured out ways to do that. The problem is the receivers burn out very quickly. So they're trying to figure out the longevity issue.
Intel's working on that, though.
We can actually now receive data at the speed of light. That would potentially revolutionate.
Even Google's talking about offering 1 gigabit service to certain markets with their fiber
I think
service.
the speed of light's even more than that.
I know, but I mean, LAN is 1 gigabit, and you can run entire terminal server sessions over that. I mean, full graphical terminal sessions. All right, that's my prediction. What's yours?
Okay, mine involves a piece of technology that Chris pointed out to me last year, so I know it's already come a ways from that. But he basically showed me, he picked up his iPhone one day, turned on the camera, and it was like a Google Maps plugin or something like that?
It was Yelp, yeah.
And where it basically took the data from his GPS combined with the magnetometer,
it's basically the compass,
built into the phone, and basically wherever he would point it, it would show a graphical overlay of the world beyond. Now, pretty crappy right now. Has a long way to go, but those GPS sensors and magnometers are getting more and more sensitive by the day, practically. Each phone that comes out is better at it.
There's an app now on the Android phones called Layer, and it has gotten really good.
Yeah.
Crazy good.
So even just in 1 year, it's come an amazing way. Now,
my idea with Google Goggles, which is image recognition. Google Goggles is real-time image recognition and search of retrieval data.
Now, put all that in a nice little headset that just looks like regular pair of glasses or sunglasses, and it fits right on your head. It's very easy to use. Maybe it might come with like a wrist touchpad or something to plug into it.
No, dude, it's going to be your phone. Everything's going to be your phone.
But why have a phone? It's something in your hand. You need to be able to interact with the world.
No,
anyway,
your phone's going to be in your pocket.
The data that you receive and you see through these glasses becomes a graphical overlay, a heads-up display.
I love that.
That interacts with the world around you in full 3D because it's on your eyeballs. Now, Chris, I mentioned this earlier about like a Jarvis in your head.
I was picturing like a Geordie kind of visor situation.
Yeah, like a big clunky thing. And you were like, why can't it just be contact lens?
Yeah, like a projection or something.
And big thumbs up to that. Because that's even less intrusive.
I think you've nailed it. I think it's going to be nice, simple glasses, and they'll be trendy to wear. And they'll project onto a contact lens sheet in your eyeball. And I think it'll be some sort of really high-speed wireless to your phone. Phone will be in your pocket. Because you're going to want like caller ID information up on that heads display.
Yeah, sure. And maybe just like a little...
You want to read text messages.
A universal button that can do whatever you're looking at. Gives you a contextual command.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the phone and I hit this button, I want phone commands. If I'm looking at the TV, I want to control the TV.
If you're looking up at the sky, you can push the button and check the weather.
That would be awesome.
It's contextual. It can recognize what you're looking at just by using the GPS and magnometers.
It's funny, I have a Bluetooth headpiece that has one, what I call a multi-function button, and depending on where I'm at in my phone, that button does different stuff.
Yeah.
So it will do on one spot, it'll do voice commands. On another spot, it'll answer and hang up. On another spot, it'll start playback of a video file. So they've already started to do the contextually aware controllers.
Now, if you can combine that phone/computer headset technology with cloud computing, so you don't need the heavy processors on your head, basically, but you can do the fully rendering of receiving the data.
If you've got a data connection, a wireless data connection, you could be sending that off all the time. Combining my cloud rendering idea,
take that. I mean, you'd probably want to opt into these services, but what if like Twitter of the future has geolocation? So when you have your overlay, you can see
Twitter has geolocation today.
That chick's on Twitter. That guy's on Twitter.
Oh, and you get the overlay of their Twitter handle.
Yeah, and what they're maybe twittering about right there.
That's freaky, dude.
I know, but that's the future that I see.
What if you looked over at somebody and it shows like their most recent status update? Which I know I'm sounding like a dork here. But
I wonder where I'll stash the body.
Yeah, or like, man, I have the runs today. You don't want to see that.
Well, you want to be able to opt in and opt out of that kind of stuff. But
yeah, well, my
maybe the future's a little scary. That's what happens with technology.
my Eva phone, they're going to start doing Twitter updates when your address book entry person calls. It'll show their most recent Twitter update. And I'm just like, oh, this is just not going to be good. I can only imagine.
Yeah, DLP in the chat room says that so life becomes an MMO.
Really?
Yeah, because then they'll have names over their heads.
Yeah,
that you can see because of your glasses overlay.
And maybe they'll even be able to buy from.
There'll probably be like a counterculture that doesn't wear the glasses that are like protesting on every street corner with like blank signs or something. I don't know.
Brian. Yeah, that does sound pretty cool though, because it would be handy to have that information.
Yeah,
like you totally nailed it with Jarvis. When Iron Man looks at stuff, he gets a total readout.
Right.
So I want that.
Now, realistically, you can't really have a 3D display that's also interactive. I mean, maybe in the future. I just can't think of any way to do it. But if it's on your face, then it only has to be displayed here,
Yeah.
and then it just interacts with you based on your movements.
Yeah.
That could work.
I totally see that working.
Yeah.
So the question
That's
is
the future.
The question is, in 15 years, I have no doubt that the technology will be capable of it in 15 years. Do you think they'll be able to get the whole thing down where it's integrated and at a price point that people will buy up like their iPods?
Yeah.
You think so? Okay.
Oh, that reminds me. I even had a name for it because obviously it's going to be an Apple product,
You
right?
think so?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it'll be an Android product made by Google because they want to index everything you're doing.
Well, maybe. I mean, if Google keeps growing, then maybe. But right now,
There'll
based on
probably
today's
be an Apple
market,
version of it.
I think the Apple's version, I'm very proud of this name. I'm going to go ahead and patent it. It will be I am.
I am.
Yeah.
I
so
and
then
then
their ad campaign can be I think.
I am augmented.
Therefore, I am.
I am augmented.
Yeah.
And then
I am the new reality. I am the future.
the Apple version will like you'll be able to look up at the sky, but it'll only give you weather from Apple's weather servers.
Right.
You know, and you can look at movie trailers, but only from Apple's trailer page. I don't know. That's how I foresee that going.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, Jupiter at Night is Monday through Thursday. Now,
So this was your weekend edition.
this is your weekend edition. Though if you feel like you want to kill some time at 9 p.m. on Friday, tomorrow night, it won't be Jupiter at Night, but you will be able to catch Lotso, our video game show. We'll be talking our top 5 party games, and we're going to break down some of the gameplay mechanics in Titan's Quest, speaking of an old game. But there's some actual gameplay mechanics in there that we want to see applied to current games. We're covering that. That's going to be 9 p.m. tomorrow Pacific over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/live.
They do that live. So, if you've got Titan Quest and want to chime in, you can probably join them in the chat room.
Or
do you guys take calls?
Well, we're talking about actually.
All
taking some
right.
calls. And we'd love also in the chat room some top 5 party suggestions.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to join us tomorrow and give out yours, we'll read some of those in the show.
That'd be great.
All right, everyone. Well, that wraps up this week's set of Jupiter at Night. But we'll be back Monday night.